All right. Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the introduction. It really has been a while, so I was pretty nervous. But I'm also excited to be here. I'm going to talk about Zcash today and why I think it's the perfect freedom money. And I'm going to start with a short introduction. So one of my core beliefs is that I think for a free society, we need the ability to communicate and transact privately. And if you want to put some labels on me, you could call me like a cypherpunk, a crypto anarchist. But in the context of this talk, what I'm really interested in is freedom money, which is what got me into Bitcoin in the first place. However, maybe you know what the biggest problem of Bitcoin is. Like A, blocks are too small. B, there are only 21 million coins. C, lack of privacy. Or D, the unknown founder. So let's have a little vote by clapping. So who thinks A is the answer? No big blockers. Okay. Only 21 million coins? Okay. Lack of privacy? All right. Unknown founder? No. Okay. That was very clear. Hal Finney agrees. So actually already in 2009, he was looking at ways to add more anonymity to Bitcoin. And in 2010, there was already like discussion on the Bitcoin Talk forum. And somebody wrote, as some might have noticed, one of the things that bugs me about Bitcoin is that the entire history of transactions is completely public. And somebody else said, okay, although I was recently about like some magic technology, and Satoshi himself replied, this is a very interesting topic. If a solution was found, a much better, easier way, more convenient implementation of Bitcoin would be possible. And that's what I'm going to talk about it today, about this solution. But before that, we just go quickly into money. You probably all know this, but I'm just going to recap it quickly. So what are the definitions of money? It's a medium of exchange, it's a unit of account, and it's a store of value. And it should have these features or properties. It should be portable, divisible, durable, rare, and fungible. And one of the classic monies is gold, which is pretty durable. It's also rare. There's like about 1 to 2% inflation rate per year. And it's fungible. So it's like good analog money. It's not very portable. You can't send it over the internet. And if it's a lot, it's also hard to carry, and it's not really divisible. So it's kind of hard to, pay for coffee with a gold coin. And then like in the 70s, we switched over to the fiat money standard, which is kind of like complementary. It's very portable, like both like paper bills and also like the electronic forms. Wire transfer of credit cards is pretty divisible. Paper bills are not that durable. The electronic form is not very fungible. And the most important thing, it's not rare. So it's like both good in terms of medium of exchange and unit of account, but cash is also trash as a store of value. So if you compare the two, it's actually like complementary. So what we would really like is some form of digital money that combines the two. So like digital cash or anonymous electronic money or unstoppable private money or just like freedom money. And they were like early incarnations. David Schwarm, DigiCash, like the eCash. We have a talk tomorrow about that as well. And also eGold, which was very popular. It was shut down in 2009. And the main problem was always centralization. And so what we would really like to have is unstoppable private money. Unstoppable meaning decentralized, censorship resistance and cannot be switched off. Private meaning sender and receiver anonymity, hidden amounts, no metadata leakage. And money meaning it has the money properties we just talked about. It's integrated and interchangeable, and ideally it should be number graph technology, meaning it's a store of value or it appreciates. So then 2009, as you all know, Bitcoin got introduced. Genesis block was mined 2009, was a big breakthrough. It solved the double spending problem without a trusted third party and basically created digital gold. I mean, it's also a narrative we hear a lot these days. Bitcoin is digital gold, and it gets all these properties except it's not fungible, meaning it's not private enough. And if, for example, an UTXO has been used in some crime and goes to a centralized exchange, then it could be blacklisted. So it kind of almost succeeded, made gold digital, but it's still less fungible than gold. And the magic technology I was mentioning earlier are zero-knowledge proofs. So what is the solution Satoshi was looking for? How can we actually apply zero-knowledge proofs to Bitcoin? And just a short intro, zero-knowledge proofs is basically like a cryptographic protocol where one party can convince the other party that a given statement is true without conveying anything else about the mere fact that the statement is true. So if you want to apply that to Bitcoin, what do we have to prove? We would have to show ownership of the UTXO. We have to show that it actually exists. We have to make sure it hasn't been spent before. We have to make sure that the value is the same in the transaction, so there's no inflation, that the amounts are valid, that all the outputs are well informed, and that the consensus rules are respected. And actually, the no double spend, again, is the hardest problem, which Satoshi already recognized. It's the need to check for the absence of double spends that requires global knowledge of all transactions. It is hard to think of how to apply zero-knowledge proofs in this case. We're trying to prove the absence of something which require knowing about all and checking that the something isn't included. And it turns out solution was found, solution was implemented in Zcash, which is what I will talk about in the main part. I'm going to split it up in 5 parts, or actually 4 parts. I'm going to talk about the history, present, and future of Zcash. While doing that, I'm going to clear up the misconceptions. Going to talk a little about Zcash investing. And yeah, I just like that quote because the tweet, it really maps nicely on the history, present, or future, because the history was making Zcash private. In the present, it's about making it nice. And in the future, it's a lot about making it scale. So just to show you the preconceptions first. So a lot of people think that Zcash had a pre-mine, that it contains inflation bug, that it requires a trusted setup, that it has bad UX, it's not practical, that nobody uses shielded pools, that the ecosystem is centralized, and that it's a bad investment. So the history. So 2013, there was the important ZeroCoin paper, team around Matthew Green, basically used the idea of digital cash with zero-knowledge proofs to make coins unlinkable. So you could still see the recipient of a transaction, you can still see the amount, but you couldn't see the sender. And then in 2014, they extended that and made it basically completely hidden. So you cannot see anything anymore. They used zero-knowledge proofs, zk-SNARKs to implement this or to solve this. And basically, total unlinkability between transactions. You cannot see who is sending to whom, what the amounts are. And then after this, the team around Zuko formed. At the time, it was called, I think, Zcash Company, then later renamed to Electric Coin Company, to implement Zcash using the technology described in the paper. And they launched in 2016. So it was basically a fork of Bitcoin, not a fork in the sense of forking the chain, but a fork in the code base. They kept a lot of the design parameters of Bitcoin. So 21 million ZEC will never be more. Same halving schedule. Block time was reduced to 2.5 minutes. Later halved again to 75 seconds. Also proof of work system, just a different algorithm. Difficulty adjustment every block. And they basically took the exact same design from Bitcoin and had that as transparent addresses. And they took 20% of the mining rewards, 80% go to miners and 20% is founders rewards, where the early investors and the team was financed with, and then the whole development. And the actual zero-knowledge proof was implemented in the Sprout pool, which I would call like the production release. So it was the first time that somebody actually took the academic design from the zero cash paper and implemented it in production. They created like shielded addresses. It required the famous trusted setup, meaning there were 6 people that set up like initial parameters, and one of the participants at least has to be honest. meaning there is some toxic waste created during this procedure and they need to destroy it. It later turned out that Edward Snowden actually was one of the people who participated in the ceremony under a pseudonym. So it made it production ready, but it wasn't practical. Like, you couldn't use it on mobile. It's it took a lot of RAM to create a transaction, took a lot of compute power. So then in 2018, they had the practical release, I would call it the sapling pool, which also had a trusted setup with 2 phases, but more contributors. Again, one participant had to be honest. Actually, it turned out there was an inflation bug in Sprout, which was like an error in the zk-SNARK construction in the paper, actually. And that was fixed there. And they also introduced turnstiles, which if there would ever be an inflation bug in a pool, that would make sure that there could never be more coins leaving the pool than entering the pool. And it, for the first time, became actually practical to use on mobile. And then 2022, the Orchard trustless release introduced like new cryptography, the Halo 2 proving system, which doesn't require a trusted setup anymore. Also has a lot of like other simplifications. Transaction design is simpler. It would also allow to create multi-sig transactions with Frost style crypto, and created a unified address, which you can give somebody only one address and then they can choose, do they want to send on Sapling or an Orchard. And now today, Sapling is still used, Orchard being the default, and Sprout is being phased out, meaning you can't send more coins into the Sprout pool. So to maybe picture it, so you basically right now you have like 4 pools in Zcash. You have the transparent pool, which is like on Bitcoin. You have the Sprout pool with very little coins in there, no more going in, and you have the 2 main ones, Orchard and Sapling. So that kind of like brings us to the present, where we have the technology finally ready. Before we go more into the present, just one important concept. I think Zuko coined it that way. Privacy comes from value at rest. I think that's a very common misunderstanding, that people think that if they send some coin, let's say, into Mixer, that it somehow makes it like private. But the problem is it doesn't really matter. Even if you have the perfectly private store value, nothing see what's going on, like it's in Zcash in the shielded pools. You can still trace what's going in and going out by time and by value. So if you set whatever, like a Bitcoin in a Mixer, and then like shortly after it comes out, then it's kind of timeable. And that's the case for every cryptocurrency. So as every privacy coin, as long as you're not having like using all the transactions within the coin, you always have the 3 phases. You're moving coins in, you're transacting within the privacy coin, you're moving coins out. And so let's say in a coin like Monero itself is a privacy coin, and then a coin with Monero is like the privacy coin, and then you have exchanging in and out of Monero. So you could also, let's say, if you want to trace darknet markets, trace a large vendor, you look at exchanges, like who is selling a lot of Monero. That's where you would actually look. And in Zcash, you can just look at it as 2 systems combined in one. So you have this transition in the system from transparent into shielded, and from shielded into transparent again. And then, of course, on the outside too. So what really counts in privacy coins is how private are the shielded transactions and how is it integrated into the wider ecosystem. So is it easy to actually go in and out? And that's actually what Zashi did. So it's like a user-friendly mobile wallet. For me, it was like the iPhone moment of Zcash. So I've been looking at Zcash on and off over the years. And then 4 months ago, a friend of mine sent me the link and said, look at this. And I looked at it and I was like, oh, wow, okay, it's like the first iPhone, it's like almost there. And it's designed exclusively for shielded Zcash payments, meaning that's the main use case. You can still receive transparent Zcash, but it forces you to shield them first before you can spend them. Few people from the team are in the back, and I'm sure they're happy to answer questions later. And now in the new release, it also allows you to swap ZEC in and out with near intents, which is kind of like a DEX without KYC. So directly in the app, you can receive Bitcoin, USDC, Ether, Solana, have it convert to Zcash, and you can also swap it out again. And you can also pay with it. The difference being that if you pay, there's an exact amount that is sent out. When you swap, there are like some slippages, but with a payment, let's say you buy something on a website, they want an exact amount. And they have also pay with Flexer integration, which is some service mostly used in the US, where you can basically pay for a burrito and the merchant gets US dollar and you just pay with Zcash. They also have hardware wallet support integrated with Keystone Wallet, which basically is an air-gapped solution how you can actually hold your Zcash on a hardware wallet and sign transactions with Zashi, which is, of course, super important for people who are holding larger amounts. And Ledger is working on adding shielded Zcash support in the future as well, or very soon. And that will also be integrated in Zashi. And that shows very nicely that this, this thing of like, oh, nobody's using the shielded pool was actually not a fundamental problem of the system, but it was a UX problem. And yeah, people call it the Zashi effect. So you can clearly see that when Zashi launched, the shielded pool went straight up to almost 4 million now. And I expect when the Ledger integration is launched, since it's the dominating wallet, it will be even much more. Like I said, there are like some DEXs, near intents is integrated into Zashi. You can also use it like as a website. There's also Maya protocol and some front ends that also allow you to swap it in and out without KYC. And there are also some other wallets that support Zcash these days. So Unstoppable Wallet supports shielded Zcash, serve as a sapling pool. Zashi uses the more modern version of OCAD. Unstoppable Wallet is adding swaps, and Keg Wallet is adding Zcash. At least that the CEO promised it on Twitter. I don't know the details. And there are also some more Zcash only wallets with like more features, but without DEX integration. So the ecosystem, it's true in the beginning was pretty centralized, but it has been decentralized significantly over the years. So now you have the nonprofit Zcash Foundation based in the US. You have Electric Coin Company based in the US. You have Shielded Lab based in Switzerland, which is fully donation funded. Zuko actually is not the CEO anymore and is working for Shielded Labs. And Josh Swihart, I hope I pronounced it correctly, is now the CEO of Electric Coin Company. And also the funding in the early days, basically ECC got like the money automatically. Now the 20% development funds are going to Zcash community grants, where people can actually, apply to some sort of committee for grants. And now it was just voted in. Coin holder directed retroactive grants. That's basically you apply for grant after you did the work, which has the advantage that you don't have to convince somebody that you're going to do the work and define milestones, and the grant committee doesn't have to, check milestones and be project managers, but you apply after the fact saying, you already did the work, and this will be the coin holders themselves voting quarterly on the proposals if they want to fund them or not. So it's been like decentralized both like regionally, organizationally, and also the funding is that, Electric Coin Company has to compete with everybody else on the same footing. So this basically made Zcash the, perfect money in the sense that it has all these properties. It's like when you use shielded Zcash, the coins are totally fungible. So in a way, it made Bitcoin fungible and delivered unstoppable private money. What Satoshi himself said would be possible if a solution was found. And now to the future, I personally think money is a technology, and that technology always evolves. So we had like thousands of years of different monies, and money is changing, payment methods changing, and so I don't think there will be like this perfect money coming from some unknown creator that doesn't have to be changed ever. And so that's why also in in Zcash, there's a lot of things which are actually planned to be adapted. Like what I already mentioned, there will be more coin holder voting. So I think that cryptocurrencies, good governance is necessary, but not sufficient for success. So there are like some projects like Decred and Tezos, which I consider the market leader in governance, but they have a problem with adoption, in my opinion, mostly because having good governance is not a unique selling proposition. You know, it's like a secondary factor. There's a counterexample, of course, Bitcoin, super successful. Remains to be seen if the government's model is good enough. I mean, we need to do quantum resistance upgrades now. Op return seems to be some contentious issue. All right, the next one, what's changing or what's mostly done is rewrite in Rust. So they basically rewrote the entire code base, which was forked from Bitcoin in C++, rewrote it in Rust, brought the zk-SNARKs implementation, replaced it by ZebraD, including the proof system, the circuits, and also like they have a Rust library, librust zcash, which integrates all the cryptographic primitives. The rewrite is almost done. There's some ecosystem migration and RPC parity still remains to be done. And the benefits will be, you will have high velocity because it's easier to develop in Rust than in C++. You will have higher security because, you know, some bugs are basically not possible in in Rust. And you will have better integration. So you can already see it with Keystone Wallet. They could just, you know, take the libraries that Zcash provides from this library and then use it for the transaction construction and signing and so on. The next thing on the roadmap is a network sustainability mechanism. So the problem is the future security budget. It's the same problem that people are discussing in Bitcoin. You have a 21 million hard cap, and the mining reward through the halving, they basically go to zero. And at some point, you're only left with transaction fees. And it's questionable if transaction fees are enough. One solution, for example, in Monero are tail emissions. I personally like tail emissions, but it's not something you can later change. I mean, imagine people would say, let's change the hard cap on Bitcoin. That's not going to fly well, and it's the same in Zcash. So there's a proposal to introduce a network sustainability mechanism, which basically establishes a voluntary burn mechanism and then smoothes the issuance curve. So you don't have like this strict fall-offs every 4 years, but make it more smooth. And the coins you burn, they will be added to the emission curve, and then take 60% of the transaction fees and burn them, meaning instead of like issuing them now when the mining rewards are still high, you issue them later. So there's no like real urgency now, but the culture in the Zcash ecosystem is to do it sooner rather than later. So you can see it here. So right now we're basically, after the second halving, we're down to like 4.2% inflation rate. And if this Zcash improvement proposal would activate, the curve would, you know, smoothen out. Next one on the roadmap are Zcash shielded assets. So it's basically an ORCAD extension enabling the creation, transfer, and burn of custom assets like ERC20s. So it will also allow for NFTs, and assets could be wrapped assets if you have a bridge. And with that feature being activated, you would have the same anonymity as shielded Zcash transactions in the same pool. So like on-chain, you couldn't differentiate if there is like a shielded asset moving or like native Zcash. There's no freeze function on the asset itself. Of course, if it's a bridged asset, then the bridge could always like freeze it on the other side, but there's nothing native in there. Just to be clear, these are not smart contracts. It's using the technology of ZK proofs to implement a specific functionality. There's also the crosslink proposal, which adds assured finality to Zcash by introducing proof of stake finalizers. So basically the idea is to move from a purely proof of work system to a hybrid system, like basically defense in depth. You have, two technologies that have to fail in order for the entire system to fail. The proposal suggests to start with 100 stake-weighted finalizers, which takes some fees for the service, and the rest goes to the stakers. The proposed fees is basically to split the 80% that go to the miner right now into 40 for the stakers, 40 for the miners. So you have the same security budget, could stake directly from the Oracle pool, and wouldn't change the hard cap. And the most exciting and also the most in the future project, as far as I understand it, is Project Tachyon, which would basically remove the bottlenecks you have right now in Zcash, like big one being that there is global nullifier set. So when you make a shielded transaction in Zcash, in order to prove that you haven't spent the node, also the UTXO on Zcash is called a node, that you haven't spent it already, there's like a nullifier created and added to the chain, and this set right now is global and cannot be pruned. So in Bitcoin, in theory, once a UTXO has been spent, you could prune it from the chain. In Zcash, that's currently not possible. And also wallets right now, they have to basically try to decrypt every node. And these are bottlenecks that Project Tachyon would solve. This is like a talk in and of itself, and I don't understand all the details, but it's like a believable story. Chambon is a very acknowledged cryptographer, also one of the co-inventors of Halo 2. And this technology would not compromise on privacy nor on self-custody. And the big UX challenge is that you would have to adopt out-of-band payments, meaning it's not enough anymore to just scan this chain. It's more like with eCash systems like Fedi or Cashew, that you have to give the recipient the node themselves. So that's the future of Zcash. Talk a little bit about investing. My belief is that for something to actually work as money in the competition of monies, I think there's always competition of monies, it has to work as an investment too. Question, would you buy something like this? So this, like you can see it on X all the time, looks terrible, which is the Zcash price curve. Problem was that when you actually switch to market caps, that here they launched with a slow start, and everybody was interested in buying and wanted to buy like an early Zcash. So there was no supply, so there was supply squeeze, and the price went through the roof. And when you switch to market cap, you can basically see the 3 cycles: 2017, 21, and here right now 25. So also, like in Bitcoin, it's basically at the point where only now the inflation rate is down to like a manageable level. That was basically, if you compare it to Bitcoin, that's the point right now of the 2017 first mainstream bull run in Bitcoin. And just like, if you look at, maybe I've seen this as quite popular, if you look at global total assets, it's roughly $1 trillion of total global assets. Real estate, bonds, money being the largest one. Gold is 22 trillion. Bitcoin is 2 trillion. That's where a lot of the Bitcoin will go to $1 million. Argument comes from, because that would just basically 10x. But if you look at the privacy coins, the market cap of all privacy coins is just 10 billion. And 60% of that is Monero, 21% is Zcash. So that's only like 0.5% of Bitcoin's market cap. And if you look at offshore wealth, meaning wealth that is not declared, people storing in some offshore jurisdictions, for example, that's at least 10 trillion. It's very hard to estimate, of course. And so the market cap of all privacy coins is less than 0.1% of all offshore wealth. And if you combine all those, you can like see the progression, like 1 trillion global assets, 22 trillion gold, 2 trillion Bitcoin, which is 10% of gold. Undeclared offshore wealth is just 1% of total global assets. Privacy coins, less than 0.1% of offshore wealth. Zcash, 0.02% of offshore wealth. And the question I had was, okay, in the global environment we're in right now, we have more surveillance, digital IDs, age verification, more reporting requirements everywhere, higher taxes, like tax rich, more mobility. There's a lot of talk about millionaire migration. We heard it from Paul earlier, how to go to better pastures. And if you ask yourself, in this environment, will the percentage of offshore wealth relative to total global assets go up or down? Or will the percentage of privacy coins relative to offshore wealth go up or down? And then Zcash position has the best-in-class privacy, less shady than Monero, which means matters for offshore wealth. Best-in-class UX and deep integration into crypto ecosystem, meaning you can easily go in and out. And then again, privacy coins relative to Bitcoin, will it go up or down? And will this 21% market cap relative to privacy coins go up or down? That was kind of my investment thesis in a nutshell when I wrote it down almost 3 months ago. Going back to the point that to actually store wealth privately, you can't use a privacy coin as a mixer. So that means you have to leave the money in there for longer time, use it as a savings account. And that means you actually have an accrual story for Zcash if the market demands for privacy and understands this dynamic. These are the two important points. If the market doesn't care, people want CBDCs, this thesis doesn't hold. And if people don't understand it, also doesn't hold. But if they do understand it, in my opinion, there's a value accrual story why it actually makes sense to hold Zcash for people who are interested in privacy, and makes it an interesting privacy play, mid to long term. So at that point, that was pretty out there. And I still think, to really know if this is true, we have to, look at it mid to long term. Right now, last week made it easier for me to, make this argument. Right now, compared to when I wrote it down, it's up 200%, while these two are basically flat. And, looks like this, God candle, and market leader on a 7-day. But I don't know, it's not investment advice. Time will tell. To sum it up, I think the future of money is private. I think there will be competing monies. I think it's a good thing that we have competing monies, so we can have the best technology, hopefully win, the one that gives us freedom money. And like I said in the beginning, it's a very interesting topic, zk knowledge proofs. And Satoshi himself said if a solution was found, a much better, easier, more convenient implementation of Bitcoin would be possible. And such a solution was found and implemented in Zcash. And I think it's now finally ready for prime time, with the UX being that good. And I think that's why it's one of the projects that have been overlooked a lot, because it's been old and people haven't paying attention what's happening. And at least was the case for me. A lot of these misconceptions, I had them as well, until I fell down the rabbit hole 4 months ago and started digging. And so that delivers us unstoppable private money. And since money is a technology, this technology is evolving. I showed you the roadmap. And so basically, Zcash 2.0 is, has the best-in-class privacy, has the best-in-class UX and integrations. It's an interesting privacy play if you're into investing. I cleared up the misconceptions. So there was no pre-mine. There's development fund. Inflation bug was fixed. Required the trusted setup is not necessary anymore. UX is really good now and very practical. Shielded pools adoption is going through the roof. Ecosystem is decentralizing. Bad investment so far looking good. So I think it's giving us unstoppable private money. It's pretty decentralized. Censorship resistance is very good, because a miner cannot censor shielded transactions because he simply doesn't know what's in them, and cannot easily be switched off. You have perfect private sender and receiver anonymity. You can't see the amounts. Metadata leakage also got a lot better. In Zashi, they now added Tor. And I hope that at some point we will see NIM or other mixnet integration as well. and it has all the money properties. It's integrated and exchangeable, meaning you can swap it for other cryptos and you can pay with it, which is necessary for money. And I think it's pretty good number go up technology. So thank you very much. And I'll put the slides on my X and open for questions. Thank you.
So I have two immediate questions. First of all, how many Zcoin have been mined so far? Where is it at the emission schedule? How many Zcoin are out there? I didn't really see that in your chart.
I think, I don't know, 16 or something like that. 16, I would guess, but I don't know it from the top of my 16.3.
16.3 million so far.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And the timeline is the same as Bitcoin, 2040 for the end emission, the last flock to be mined.
Well, it's a bit shifted because it launched later, but it's the same emission curve. So right now we're basically at the point where Bitcoin was in 2017.
Gotcha. Okay.
In terms of emission, yeah.
The second question is, does it have the same inherent UTXO limitations that we have for scalability, and a lot of people who could have a UTXO for it to be, global money to be suffering from that same UTXO problem?
In principle, yes. If you're looking at the transparent pool, I mean, there is a block size limit. I think it's 2 megabytes and the blocks are a bit more frequent. But if you're just looking at the transparent pool, yes, you have this limitation. And right now, also for shielded, Project Tachyon would remove the limitation.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So this is going to be good. This is going to be my. So put up all your hands and so I can record my. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go this way. All right, I'm going to start here. Thanks for the talk. I want to quote a part of the reply of the current CEO of electric coin company. You can find it easy on the Zcash forum. The quote: "Some of the things we don't discuss include details of confidential or sensitive meetings we often meet with various agencies, both formally and informally. We have met with the White House. We often have off-the-record conversation with the staffers and politicians on the Hill. We have worked hard to keep the doors open for the Zcash and kill things that pose a threat." So my question is, how do you justify the fact that the main developers of Zcash are running to Uncle Sam to use the government's tools? Thanks.
I would justify it in the same way that, for example, the Signal people are talking to regulators right now in the European Union. I think it's very smart that you talk to regulators and try to prevent ban laws from happening. And at the same time, you should build a technology that doesn't require the approval of regulators.
Right? So we don't really know actually what it is happens in those discussions. The challenge is made is that those discussions include potentially compromising data and collaboration with the government, as opposed to just okay, well, we're talking to you about what we're doing. So
no, I think the protocol itself, the code itself is open source. So that's like in every protocol, that's the most important thing. If you're worried about the security of the system, you should, check the code, check the papers. And this off the record conversations. I mean, there is like stuff Zcash does that is on the record, the public, what's called PGP, pretty good privacy.
Party signature, something like that. Yeah.
Now they have some, some open discussion forums where they also invite regulators, but everybody has off-the-record conversations. We have off-the-record conversations here. So I don't think that is like a valid criticism.
It's not a threat factor for you.
No.
Okay.
Huh.
Oh, you said that Zcash can be used on value, and not rather payment, but it can be used on value. So my question is, because if Zcash will be worth more, the companies from the entire world will look at it as something that they want to ban. So if Zcash price is going up, then the companies want to ban it more. So at the end, they probably will ban it, for example, the major exchanges will then instantly remove that, and then that price will go down. So if I see a paradox that the Zcash will be more popular, will be worth more, then the attacks from the economies will be bigger. What can you say on that?
Well, I think that's why these, DEX integrations are so important right now. The same, fears you just described also happened with Bitcoin, and it was banned in China for, I'm not sure if it's still banned, but the miners were banned. They moved to the US and so on. But now it has like mainstream adoption and also regulatory clarity. Like our sailor guy always goes on about how important that is. But now, given how prevalent crypto is with DEXs, I think it's basically almost impossible to ban privacy coins anymore that are integrated into the wider ecosystem. Because you can still just buy Bitcoin or USDC on an exchange, centralized one, and then just swap it. So I don't see that as a big threat. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello. 6 people did generate private keys for Zcash, and one of them is Edward Snowden. So my question is, do you believe that the keys have been destroyed and will not offend the law of informants upon request? So I didn't saw how they remove these keys. So what you think?
Okay, I have to explain it a little bit more. So basically, during the creation, the setup of the Sprout pool, there was this trusted setup ceremony where basically 6 people came together. I think it's also on YouTube if you have a boring night.
Also including Peter Todd. I mean, this has been covered quite a many times.
Yeah.
We trusted setup, but
I'm not sure, but maybe Peter Todd was then in the second one, which had like more participants. But
no, I believe he was one of the first original 6.
Okay. Yeah.
Because Vlad has his laptop, right? That he bought from Peter. Recently unboxed it and whatever. So but please go ahead. I want to take the answer.
And so basically they creating like parameters for the pool. And during this creation, there is some data that is called toxic waste. And if at least one person destroys the data, then you cannot inflate the supply in the pool. So there's not like...
So it's not like one of the 6 could do something. If you can provably show that one of the 6 has destroyed the toxic data, which came from the setup ceremony, then it's safe. And we have that proof in Peter Todd's destruction.
And that was important.
It's not valid anymore because they removed the trusted.
Exactly. So that was in Sprout, which is not used. There was 6 people, including Zuko and Edward Snowden. So you would have to believe all of them colluded to inflate their, love of life project. Then in the second one, you had 90 people. And now in the third iteration, Orchard, there is no trusted setup anymore. So this problem doesn't exist. Yeah.
Right.
Let's talk about the energy there. So you said that the value comes from the privacy comes from value at rest.
Yes.
And you spoke about the tokenized assets.
Yes.
So what happens when people store USDT in the shielded pool? It will be value at rest. So that will give you privacy property. But then there is no actual story for Zcash itself. Like if people store whatever, red Bitcoin or something else, then basically this story is like less relevant.
Yeah, very good question. I mean, first of all, there will be fees, of course, for the shielded asset. I think the biggest argument against that problem is that if you're actually interested in having this private store of value, you don't want the bridging risk. So, if you have your USDT, USDC, let's say, as a shielded asset on Zcash, there would be a bridge that actually, where you can pull it out. And the bridge would probably then say, oh, it's a stable coin. So if you pull out like more than $10,000, then we're going to do KYC or freeze your assets. And same with like Bitcoin, you would have the custody or the bridge risk. So I think it's not a risk personally, but there has been a lot of like discussion in the community, and there are people on both sides of exactly that argument.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation here.
All
right. You had those two types of grants going on. One of them is retrospective, you said. Where the funds come from for this?
That's from the 20% of the mining rewards of the new coin. So 80% go to the miners and 20% go in there. That's why it was 12 and 8%. So the sum is 20.
Okay, yeah, but across the room, looking backward, is it anybody else?
So it's very nice to see money going to privacy projects, but from an economic perspective, is there any discussion to remove this 20% for the long term?
I'm not aware of it, no.
Okay, it's the idea is to keep it forever.
Yeah, I mean, no, actually, that's not true. So there was a discussion. So let me see. Coinholder voting. So basically, the way it worked was that there was this transition into this idea of putting it into the retroactive grants program for a while, and then they put basically these 12%. They put it in like some lockbox on chain, and then there was a vote: should we actually introduce this retroactive grants program with that money, or should we just basically either burn or give it to the miners? I'm not sure. Like, but there was a proposal also to do that, and then the majority of the coin holders decided to keep it going like this.
Cool. Wow. That's the first new coin shill I've heard in a long time with backed up experiential data. Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you.
Being back here on stage at Now Second Culture, one of the OGs.
Thank you very much.
Flame alive.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.